Strangers at kick-off. Friends by full-time. Fans have more friends.
Búlabas for the ground.
Nadini and Mun na Muro Coidi.
The ahas and John are in there on Shaw Live, Aaron La, special that shot.
Fi me lá mi hasta really leis an céile bhí agam mar hagart.
Derma haine gohfuil me se ima céilúirí ceilteach rud an speisialta é.
Is post úntaach é seo.
Na Hammondí specialta.
Sílim gohfuil ruddy I gacarú in Aaron's na lehan the Shaw.
Tas bues a hanrod.
Breath Baha Boss. Derdín ag leithnig go hochtar RTÉ1 agus RTÉ Player.
Great pair of lungs. Shame the same can't be said about your gums. You need Corsadil. It actively helps repair bleeding gums from just 1 week. High five! We're not there yet. Corsadil. Gum experts.
Here in Ireland, we're doing well when it comes to our recycling and food waste bins. However, some paper, plastics and food are still ending up in our general waste bins. It can happen. So take a minute before you bin it and go to mywaste.ie for help and suggestions on how to make segregating your waste that bit easier. That's mywaste.ie. Brought to you by the Government of Ireland.
You're looking up, it's bright ahead.
How we use electricity can be smarter, cleaner and greener. Making your world brighter. Electric Ireland.
Summer is served with our delicious range of ice cream flavours at Dunnes Stores. Crafted with creamy Irish milk and the finest quality ingredients by our local producers in County Cork. Treat yourself to classic cookie dough. Savour rich caramel chocolate or indulgent chocolate fudge. And for the perfect movie night in, try our delicious popcorn flavour. Get the inside scoop today and save at the till with our 5 of 25 vouchers. Dunnes Stores. Always better value.
Experience amazing before you arrive. The Lexus NX plug-in hybrid.
All right, team, we've got less than 4 minutes before she gets her car insurance quotes. Brendan, you're up for the web chat if she wants assistance.
I wonder what kind of car she's going to get.
Focus, Brendan, focus. Brent, it's for you.
On it.
RedClick, insurance that just clicks. Save up to €300 when you quote online. You're watching RTÉ2.
President Lagarde, thank you so much for joining us on Euronews at this very pivotal time for Europe. This is a transformational moment in so many ways. When you look at the economy, the geopolitics, a war that is still going on in this continent, and then, of course, many other forces like the AI, which could have severe implications in the way that we live, that we work. Ultimately, when you put all these factors together, where is this continent going?
It's navigating all those changes, and it's doing it with, I think, an agenda of significant reforms that have to be implemented, with a roadmap which has been designed a couple of years ago now by my predecessor Mario Draghi and Enrico Letta, and where we just have to implement collectively what will make Europe more competitive and more fit for the 21st century, which is, as you said, fragmented, different geopolitically, and obviously to be transformed significantly by artificial intelligence on steroids.
What do you mean by on steroids?
I think that artificial intelligence is going through accelerated phases of development. So people will talk to you about Gen AI. They will now talk about ASI, superintelligence. And I think that we all have to adapt to it, but we also have to be mindful of the goods and the bads. By good, I mean improved productivity. By bad, what will be the consequences on us as a society, on the labour market in general? What impact will it have? And we have to prepare for that.
On the AI, it very much reflects the conversation about the geopolitics. Many would say this is now a two-track competition, is the United States and China. The EU will not be able to compete at that level. Is that a fair assessment? And I wonder, certainly in this town in Brussels, there's a lot of hype around Mistral. This is almost seen as a strategic asset. Is it wise to bet everything on a single company, or do we need an ecosystem around AI?
There are two very big champions in terms of AI development and hyperscalers, the United States and China. There are countries in the European Union which are regarded as third and in the race. I think the question is how you define the race and how you make sure that you are not held hostage to certain developments that are critical, and that you have some leverage on elements of the supply chain. Mistral is obviously a champion in its own way, and I think that if the Europeans decide that it's in their collective interest to focus on Mistral, for instance, but maybe a couple of others, because you don't want to have just plan A and nothing else, but that you focus on having sovereignty over developments so that you can make sure that your clouds, for instance, is possibly of a European standing nature and sitting, that some of your artificial intelligence devices, some of the tools, for instance, are critically made in Europe, invented in Europe. You bind all these components, and you then have a good dialogue with those who are ahead of you in other areas. But I think it's a question of really linking, binding, and making sure that we protect some of our interests and leverage those in order to better negotiate.
And my impression is that you don't like to lose, and you want Europe to win. So what is the recipe when you talk to finance ministers in Brussels? And I wonder, you mentioned Mario Draghi, I wonder if you speak frequently, if there's a regular communication with him. What is the recipe that you put on the table?
I think we share the same objective, that Europe wins, that Europe is competitive, that Europe leverage its incredible potential, the market, the talent, the capital, the savings. And I think that, you know, if I had two words for the finance ministers whom I love, and I was one of them, it's action more than words, and it's accelerate more than procrastinate.
Do you have to do that at 27, or can you do it at 6? As a head of the European Central Bank, I presume you would like to maintain unity at all levels. That is what guides Europe. Yeah, but should that change now?
We all need to move together. That's the strength. We are stronger all together. Now, if it takes a smaller number of them to actually move forward and bring the others with them a little later because they will have experimented, so be it. It's, you know, it's a principle that can be adopted, that is anticipated by the treaty as well. So why not?
So move ahead. And to that extent, the Spanish, just this week, they presented a plan before the Eurogroup of joint borrowing. The idea of joint debt is very political in essence in Europe. But just on the economic merit of it, they say it will create a more liquid market, it will save money, and it will be more efficient. Just on economic terms, is that something that as a head of the European Central Bank you say, let's look at it?
You know, it's more than just economic terms. It's also financial terms. Because to have a strong, vibrant and deep capital market, which is something that we all want, at least everybody says so, we need to also
you think
have...
some don't?
We need to... Well, I think everybody sings from the same hymn song, but when it comes to implementing it, it's difficult, and the devil is in the details. But it's pretty obvious that we also need to have a European asset which can, you know, parallel with the US Treasury bonds, for instance. How we go about it, how the moral hazard is addressed, how it's allocated in terms of results, to be decided. And I think it's great that a country like Spain, for instance, makes a proposal, puts it on the table for debate. And it's now for the others to say, OK, we like this part, we don't like this, we can address it. So it's good to actually move forward.
So when you hear these numbers, 800 billion euros, Mario Draghi echoed that. The Spanish seem to be putting that on the table. The French president has said, in his view, there are no taboos. That doesn't scare you. When you hear 800 billion euros, this kind of money.
Look, remember what we did for COVID. That was the amount that was actually put on the table for joint borrowing in order to respond and to produce the recovery and what was it, RRF, the
Recovery and Resilience.
Yeah, Recovery and Resilience Fund. That was roughly the amount. And the Commission went to market. We helped in the process because we act as an agent in that respect. And it was widely, broadly subscribed, oversubscribed. So I'm not saying that this is the amount. I'm just saying that to go with the capital market, you need depth, you need liquidity, and you need to entice the savings of Europe onto that market. But we need an instrument as well. And that could be one or an elaboration or an iteration of that.
And what's it going to take to convince countries that would say absolutely not? Because by the same token, we said the recovery fund legally was a one-off.
Yeah, that was said in certain circumstances. I think the circumstances have changed, and it should lead the leaders of the various member states to consider and to address what are their concerns. So I think an ex ante, no over my dead body, is not the best way to deal with it. I think the best way to deal with it is to try to analyze what is too much of a risk and how that risk can be addressed.
And the world has changed because of Vladimir Putin, because of President Trump, and we've heard the criticism. The Europeans are weak, they're decaying, civilizational erasure. They say we are facing that prospect of Europe becoming a museum, or is it also the Chinese? Is this a combination that has changed Europe now in the medium term? We got to wake up.
First of all, there is nothing wrong with European culture. And whether it is tourism, whether it is museum, whether it is attracting people to a place which has a vibrant culture,
There's a movement that says
wonderful.
Museum and the Euro pours.
Well, I will tell you something.
Is that the algorithm, I wonder?
I'll tell you something. If you visit a few industrial, entrepreneurial centers, including in the field of artificial intelligence, including in the field of high techs, you would be surprised that this is not a museum. This is a very, very active and rich with talent economy. But the key thing is to make sure that money goes in the right direction. Money should not necessarily leave Europe. It should stay in Europe to finance initiatives.
And ultimately, what is the biggest driving force? Is it President Trump? It seems to me, when I look at NATO and the G7, the Europeans have now decided we are not going to publicize a divorce, but we understand the relationship is changing, and we've got to do our own thing. And when it comes to China, is that also pushing these changes?
There's a lot of criticism around concerning fragmentation and the change in the geopolitics. But if anything, it has certainly led the Europeans to look at their own forces, to look at their own weaknesses, and try to address them. So I think that rather than criticizing the rest of the world or putting the blame on one or the other leaders, I think we have to really focus on us, see what strength we have, and we have a lot of those, leverage them and try to address the weaknesses. I think there are some low-hanging fruit. The capital market is one that is not such an easy one, but there are components that are low-hanging fruits, and I'm delighted to see that both the Commission and the Irish presidency want to move further and faster on this front.
And we've seen that this week with the digital euro. I have to ask, it may seem a trivial question, but what is a digital euro? Because on this stance in Brussels, I've heard MEPs who say this is a way to kill cash, and the head of the European Central Bank wants to control our every move.
Oh, my gosh.
What's the digital euro?
Absolutely not. Let me first,
You're not Big Brother.
Celebrate the fact that the Parliament has endorsed massively the mandate for this trilogue discussion that will take place and hopefully will be concluded by December. But let me go back to that. This piece of legislation will actually produce two results. The first one is that it will make cash and the digital euro, both legal tender, which means that nowhere in Europe can anybody say to anyone, sorry, I'm not taking your banknotes, I'm not taking your European coins, because now it has legal tender. It has to be honored. So cash is actually elevated to this legal tender level when nobody anywhere in Europe can say, I'm not taking your money because it is banknotes. No. So banknotes are secured and protected. And by the way, before the end of this year, in December 26, we will have a set of proposals that will be the new design and the new face of our banknotes, so that there is a close link between you, me, and the banknotes. So that's on the banknotes. So no, cash will not go away, cash will be rejuvenated. Digital euro, we need to move into a digital world. You book your trips using digital. You buy your transportation tickets using digital. You buy by digital means, whether you do your grocery shopping or whether you buy your clothes. We need to have also central bank money. For the moment, it's only banknotes, but we need to have it in digital form. And if it is cheaper, if it is faster, and if you can use it throughout Europe, even the better.
And the overall question, however, is how is that going to serve the euro's competitiveness? Because there is a real competition now for who will be and who will run currencies in the future. Is it still a dollar story? Dollar is king. You also see the Chinese heavily pushing for their own currency.
The best thing I know is a European solution. At the moment, we do not have that. So if you pay, in most instances, 60% of the cases, you use payment infrastructure that is under foreign capital. So we depend on predominantly US, but also sometimes China networks to organize payments. We need to have a European solution because we want to be sovereign at home. So that's what the digital euro will do, because you will have digital euro for retail, when you go to the shop, when you buy with a friend, when you want to share a bill. But we will also have what we call wholesale digital euro, which will enable the banks to organize their transaction in digital form as well.
And some expected, because of the major changes coming out of the US, that we would see a sort of move away from the dollar and that the euro could benefit from it. The numbers a year later, they show minimal pickup. It should have been, some would argue, a much stronger effect to cash in those inflows. Is this a root of concern that even with this uncertainty, the euro was not able to capitalize on it? Or would you say, look, this is a 20-year story. I can promise you in 20 years that share will be much higher?
I would never promise anything because there is so much uncertainty and those movements take time. What we have seen in history, when the sterling pound, was gradually replaced by the US dollar, it took that long, if not a bit more. So what I'm saying today is that the euro is a solid currency. 25 years ago, soon 30 years ago, people were saying, it's dead on arrival. It's not dead on arrival.
Many
it is
keep betting
solid
against
and
it.
strong. Absolutely, absolutely. So it is solid and strong. The European Central Bank is well established, credible and highly respected. The monetary union is a force, but it is not enough. We have to go beyond that. We have to be credible from a security point of view. We have to be solid from an economic point of view with lots of trade agreements. This is in process. And we have to make sure that our institutions are solid and that the rule of law is respected. But I would contend that the euro has remained stable and slightly increasing in terms of support and attractiveness. I hear a lot of noises along those lines.
And to that extent, I do have to ask you, going back to the question of China, there is a message that is legitimate, and that is Europeans are saying we want a fair deal. The numbers coming out of China, when you look at that trade deficit, it's a deficit after a deficit. They sell a lot more than we do to them. When you look at the trade surplus last year from the Chinese, is another record. There's no indication that they're rebalancing in any way that is fair to Europeans. There's a deadline now in October. What happens if the Chinese do not respond to that deadline?
The easy cop-out answer would be, it's not my business, it's the business of the Trade Commissioner.
But I know
and
you
the
care
Commission
about
at
Europe.
large. I care very much about Europe, and I care very much about keeping an international trade system in place that is sensible and that is propitious to the exchanges between nations and between enterprises as well. So I think we need to have areas that we know are critically important and that we will not let sort of fade away to any competition, including China, of course.
So you
but that
subscribe
for the
to
rest,
that a
we have,
fair deal needs to happen. It's not a fair deal what we have at this point.
it's a deal that is predominantly organized under WTO. You still have about 75% of trade conducted under WTO rules. But as far as China is concerned, there has to be a discussion of adults in the room who are, respecting each other's position and who are going to make sure that it's a good deal on both sides. The Chinese are very good at talking about it. We actually need to walk the talk
and this is
see
across.
On a sectorial basis what it means, see on a pricing basis what it means, see on a grants and subsidies basis what it means, and see on a financing basis what it means.
And will you be monitoring that October deadline? Because some say the Europeans have put themselves in a difficult situation. If they do not respond, they're going to look weak. If they respond, there's a chance of, at the bare minimum, real trade tensions, potentially a trade war.
Whenever there is a crisis, a deadline or something really hard, the Europeans are up to it. So I have full trust that this will happen.
In October?
At some point. Who am I to say that? I'm not in charge of trade negotiations,
but I'm
sure they will appreciate the urgency of the matter and the need to find a dialogue that is productive on both sides.
And President, for Europeans, you've had to increase interest rates. You talked about some of the uncertainty facing the European economy. Just for the average European, they see that they're now operating in an environment where interest rates are much higher than they were used to just a few years ago. Is this the new normal?
No, but look, I think what was not the norm was a time when interest rates were in negative territory. It was an anomaly. It's a total anomaly that if I lend you money that you will only give me back in 5 years, in addition to lending you money, I have to give you a bonus on it. You don't pay. This doesn't make any sense. I mean, everybody understands that. If I lend you money, you only pay me back in 5 years, you have to give me a little top up, which is, the term premium and the risk premium eventually. So interest rates go with the payment of money over time. And if you lend money over time, obviously there is an interest. So I think we are more in normal time when you have an interest rate. Now, interest rates are determined with the objective that the central bank has, which is to provide price stability. If you don't have price stability, if you think that prices are going to go up or down, you just completely confused as to what you should do, whether you should buy, whether you should sell, whether you should employ, whether you should fire, whether you should invest. So what our mission is price stability. And for that, the big tool, especially when you have inflation rising its nose, is interest rates. So we slightly increased interest rates, which are now at 2.25%, when we have the latest reading of inflation at 2.8%. Not to say that we align with inflation, because our goal is medium term. We need to see inflation returning to 2% in about 3 years' time. And that's what we have with the projections that we produced.
And on that level of interest rates, which is so key for European consumers, your message is to say, this is the level that we believe will be the base for the months to come, ultimately. You have to be okay with this, understand that this is the level now. Potentially even go higher, depending on how things go.
We do an assessment at each and every meeting. We meet roughly every 6 weeks, and we look at all the fundamentals. We look at the projections that we have. We look at the estimated inflation in 3 years, in 2 years, in 1 year's time. We look at the underlying inflation. What is it without oil and gas? What is it without food? What is it if you take out the most volatile things? What is it if you take out tobacco and all? We have multiple measurements. Then we also look at how this is propagated throughout the economy and what it produces ultimately in the medium term. And it's on the basis of all that that we say, we are fine, or we should go down a bit, or we should go up a bit.
And Madame Lagarde, I have to ask you, of course, about France. Just a final question. France, as Juncker used to say, it's not just any country. France is France. This is a founding member.
And Jean-Claude is Jean-Claude.
And he is, of course he is. And he also used to say, look, this is a founding member of the European Union. It is systemically important when it comes to the euro area. But beyond that, it's a country that represents a form of ideals to the world. It's a republic for its citizens. At this point, and this week we've had now what seems to be now an idea of who will be able to run or not, in which conditions, crystallize. Le Pen will be a candidate. And if I look at polls now, there is a real scenario in which the final ticket, the two final candidates, will represent extremes, certainly in the European Parliament. Jean-Luc Mélenchon is really on the left in the European Parliament. She is on the Patriots for Europe, a creature created by Viktor Orban to change Europe. When you look at that final ticket, and it is a possibility, do you say, yes, it is an existential threat to France, and therefore it is an existential threat to the stability of the European economy?
You know, I try to look at all member states without diving deep into the politics of anyone. Of course, as a French, I have my own views. I keep them to myself. But what I very much hope is that the democratic process will continue. You know, in politics, the next, 8 months is eternity. So many things can happen. We will be monitoring. We will be looking at the risk level. We will be looking at all that carefully. And we hope that reason will always prevail and that France will appreciate, whoever is the leader for France, that it is one key member of Europe and that Europe is the only playground within which member states, nations, even France, can actually play a significant role.
On the European voice, some would say that is the anomaly at this stage. There are many, many in Europe who feel proud of being Europeans, and no politician at this point seems to be able to tap really into that appetite for a political offer that really puts that up front. Do you find that bizarre that in France no one is occupying that space? And some would argue maybe you should occupy it.
Well, I will certainly explain to the extent I can, why the European dimension is so critical.
In a campaign or in your role as the head of the
I will explain that in whichever capacity I will be most efficient.
It's all open for you at this point.
I'm not a candidate for anything, but I'm very keen that Europe is protected, that Europe is the framework within which member states operate, including France.
Well, President Lagarde, thank you so much for joining us on Euronews.
Thank you very much.
Watch all our programs for free on the Euronews app and on Euronews.com.
Welcome to Kyrgyzstan, a land with nature beyond your imagination, where the old embraces the new. Kyrgyzstan, one of the fastest growing economies on the planet. Independent for 35 years, and we're rapidly transforming. New energy, new railways, new roads, and we're just getting started. A place where extraordinary people live, and everyone is welcome. Visit, invest, explore Kyrgyzstan beyond.
Two MEPs, one ring, 2 points of view, one Europe. They'll fight for their ideas. We'll make sure they do it right. With one rule: straight talk. No noise, no filters. Just politics. 30 minutes of European political punch. Welcome to the ring.
Euronews. World weather.
U.S. President Donald Trump has sent a stark warning to Iran, saying Washington will, quote, completely decimate all areas of the country if Tehran was to attempt to assassinate him. Trump's threat came after many mourners of Iran's late supreme leader Ali Khamenei called for Trump's killing as they eulogized the former Ayatollah. They also held posters showing Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the scope of a rifle, with their assassinations being retribution for the killing of their leader. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said thousands of missiles are locked and loaded should Tehran make such an attempt, adding that he had instructed the armed forces to carry out attacks for a one-year period, subject to extension. The warning comes a day after the US president claimed that he had agreed to continue talks with the Islamic Republic, but reiterated that the ceasefire outlined in the framework deal signed last month was over. Tehran denied requesting more talks with the US and expressed their readiness to continue fighting. Hostilities renewed the last 3 days, with the US directly striking Iran over what it called unjustified aggression against commercial shipping, and Iran has been responding with strikes of its own against US bases in the Gulf.
Moldovan President Maya Sandu has nominated prominent businessman Vasil Tofan as the country's next prime minister. If he receives the necessary backing by parliament, which is controlled by Sandu's Party of Action and Solidarity, he will be tasked with moving Moldova closer to its goal of EU membership. His nomination comes after former Prime Minister Alexandru Munteanu resigned on July 3rd after just 8 months on the job, citing differences with the ruling majority. In a public address, Sandu emphasized that Tofan's primary responsibilities will center on driving economic growth, reviving the domestic economy, and strengthening the overall institutional resilience of state security. To successfully secure the position, Tofan, a 44-year-old Harvard Business School graduate, will have to secure parliamentary backing within 2 weeks. He has no prior government experience and previously served as a managing partner at private equity firm Horizon Capital. The development comes soon after the EU opened the first clusters of accession negotiations for Moldova and Ukraine. Another summer heat wave has gripped the French capital of Paris, forcing the closure of the city's landmarks, including the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre Museum. Faced by the country's third heat wave since May, both announced they would be closing at 4 p.m. over the weekend to protect staff and visitors from the scorching temperatures, while the Musée d'Orsay will similarly close from 5 p.m. through to Wednesday. 24 departments across northwestern France are under a red heat alert on Saturday, according to Météo France, affecting more than 22 million people, with certain areas forecast to see temperatures as high as 39 degrees Celsius. To mitigate the risk to people's health, Paris Mayor Emmanuel Gregoire convened a crisis meeting to deploy emergency cooling measures, extend swimming pool hours, and establish dedicated hydration centers ahead of the upcoming Bastille Day holiday. The closures come amid yet another heat wave in Western Europe. In Spain, authorities suspect a wildfire which killed 12 people began when a power line broke due to the conditions caused by the country experiencing temperatures above 40 degrees Celsius. Tech giant Apple has filed a federal lawsuit against OpenAI, accusing the artificial intelligence firm of orchestrating a coordinated campaign to steal its trade secrets as it attempts to build its own consumer hardware. According to the complaint filed in California, Apple uncovered a systematic pattern of intellectual property theft by former high-level employees who later joined the Sam Altman-led firm. One former senior electrical engineer is accused of exploiting an authentication bug to secretly download dozens of confidential hardware files, including technical specifications for unreleased products and engineering presentations. The lawsuit also accuses OpenAI's chief hardware officer, Tang Yu Tan, of illegally harvesting supplier data and instructing Apple candidates to bring actual Apple parts to interviews for show-and-tell sessions. In response to these allegations, a spokesperson said OpenAI has no interest in other companies' trade secrets, maintaining that it remains focused on building its own innovative technology. OpenAI is currently moving forward with its emerging hardware business, teasing the release of a small programmable keyboard called Codex Micro.
Thank you so much for starting your day with us. You're live here on Euronews. You're watching Europe Today.
Wake up to the sound of Brussels and Europe.
15 minutes to decode, debate, and find out what's breaking in the EU capital.
Everything you need to know.
We'll bring Europe closer to you before anyone else does.
Europe Today, make it your new daily routine.
Only on Euronews.
You're watching
watching Euronews' fact-checking show, The Cube. Social media posts sharing fake claims about Europe's record-breaking temperatures have gained traction during the continent's latest heatwave episode. But experts told us that misinformation is shifting. It is increasingly focusing on discrediting climate action policies, rather than, for instance, outrightly claiming that climate change is a hoax.
La désinformation, on a l'idée que c'est nier l'existence du changement climatique ou son origine humaine. Nous, ce qu'on mesure, c'est que c'est pas forcément la forme la plus majoritaire que prend aujourd'hui le phénomène. On va surtout avoir une négation de l'efficacité ou de l'utilité de certaines solutions de la transition écologique, et notamment les énergies renouvelables et les véhicules électriques en France. Et la raison pour ça, c'est qu'il y a eu des grosses régulations qui ont touché ces secteurs d'activité, et donc les narratifs de désinformation viennent se poser là où une évolution de la loi est possible.
For example, the economic trade-offs which come with green policies are increasingly being used to prop up this information.
To claim that net zero will kill your job, it will drive up your bills, it will destroy your traditional industries, heat pumps don't work, the EV mandates is the death of the local car plants, and it's done to working people and it's not done for them. And this doesn't need any ideology at all, it just needs a heating bill.
Monetizing social media content is also a highly lucrative business, which ties into the increasing amount of misleading climate content on social media.
Those sort of conspiracy theories, those lies, that ABC of climate disinfo, the anything but climate, has become sort of a viral meme every time. It's something that these disinfluencers who are reliant on the attention economy to make their money, so they have an incentive to post every day.
As for the future of climate misinformation, experts believe that it will likely depend on existing narratives.
Where in Europe are scale-up companies performing best? New companies in Europe are expanding rapidly. Between 2023 and 2024, scale-ups in Latvia, Portugal and Greece saw the best performances, growing the most in the EU, especially in the number of employees, while Ireland, Luxembourg and Estonia registered the biggest drops. This is according to the latest data from the European Scale-up Institute. A scale-up is a company that has passed its initial startup phase and entered a period of rapid and sustainable revenue. The European Scale-up Institute also took a look at which industry scale-ups were performing the best in. Agriculture and fishing saw the biggest growth between 2023 and 2024. Over the past 5 years, Spain, Italy and Portugal occupied the top positions in the performance of most categories of companies analyzed, a significant shift from the pre-pandemic era when Nordic and Western countries typically led. Information and communication, support services and electricity, gas and steam are the three top industries where scale-ups are growing the most. The electricity and gas industry registered the steepest upward trajectory between 2020 and 2024 due to the EU's energy transition. Last year, the EU announced a €5 billion initiative designed to empower the continent's most innovative deep tech scale-ups. However, the first investments are set to be made this autumn.
Sapevate che un gesto semplice, come bere una tazzina di caffè, può contribuire a creare carta ecosostenibile?
Succede in Italia, dove una storica cartiera veneta, pioniera in Europa dell'economia circolare, trasforma i resti dell'industria agroalimentare e tessile in materia prima in grado di sostituire parte della cellulosa proveniente dagli alberi.
Il risultato è una linea di carte speciali che nascono da ciò che normalmente viene scartato, ed è anche la storia che vi racconto questa settimana su Made in Europe.
Le mura della cartiera veneta Favini trasudano storia, ma la sua produzione guarda da tempo al futuro. Questa azienda familiare, che nel 2026 celebra 120 anni, è stata tra le prime al mondo a industrializzare la produzione di carta ecosostenibile con fibre alternative e l'utilizzo di scarti. La ricerca di nuovi materiali non si ferma mai. È nel laboratorio di ricerca e sviluppo che prendono forma le idee.
In questo momento stiamo lavorando su 2 tipi di residui che saranno la parte integrante del nuovo rilancio della gamma Crash, che è la nostra gamma di carte con residui agroindustriali. Adesso abbiamo le bucce di pomodoro, abbiamo il mais. Nel tempo abbiamo lavorato su oltre 500 tipi di biomasse diverse. Non tutte quante le 500 materie prime che abbiamo provato sono riuscite a essere industrializzate. Diciamo che un 5% ce l'ha fatta.
Le percentuali di materiale recuperato variano tra il 10 e il 40% nel prodotto finale. Basta uno sguardo al magazzino delle materie prime per intuire la varietà dei residui che possono essere recuperati e valorizzati. Si va dalle mandorle agli agrumi, dalle olive all'uva, al cuoio, al caffè.
Con la linea di carte derivanti da scarti agroindustriali siamo in grado di recuperare 14 scarti diversi. Questo ad esempio è la farina di tuttolo di mais, cioè la parte interna della pannocchia del mais, e con questi 14 materiali abbiamo creato un range che si chiama Crash, che vendiamo in tutto il mondo. È un chiaro esempio di come si recupera creativamente, upcycling, un materiale scartato da una filiera industriale che può diventare una nuova materia prima.
Tutto iniziò tra la fine degli anni 80 e i primi anni 90. La necessità di bonificare la laguna di Venezia dal proliferare delle alghe trasformò un problema in un'opportunità.
La cartiera Favini ha focalizzato la propria attenzione sulla possibilità di impiegare nella fabbricazione della carta la biomassa algale raccolta nella laguna di Venezia.
E così l'alga carta fu la prima carta ecosostenibile dell'azienda, brevettata nel 92.
Abbiamo fatto questa scelta per la visione che ha avuto mio nonno, Andrea Favini, di collocare questa piccola azienda in una prospettiva di nicchia, perché a quell'epoca sicuramente l'ecologia nel mondo della carta era richiesta da un numero molto limitato di utenze. Abbiamo dovuto convincere il pubblico che dovevano prendere e sposare questo progetto perché aveva un valore per l'ecologia, per l'ambiente.
Oggi le carte ecosostenibili rappresentano ancora una nicchia in Europa, ma nell'azienda è il segmento che cresce più rapidamente. Rappresentano il 10% del fatturato, complici anche i prezzi, simili ad altre carte di alta qualità tradizionali. La sfida è garantire una filiera continua. Una dozzina di aziende italiane ed estere cedono i propri residui alla cartiera. Tra queste visito la torrefazione veneta Dersut per scoprire il sottoprodotto che l'azienda valorizza.
Questa è la pula, la pellicola che ricopre il chicco di caffè e che si distacca durante il procedimento di tossatura. Noi l'abbiamo sempre raccolta, può servire per la concimazione dei terreni, ad esempio nell'agricoltura biologica. Però nel 2022 abbiamo iniziato una collaborazione con l'Università di Padova e è stato rilevato che poteva essere utilizzato anche nella produzione di carta.
Dersut produce circa 800 kg di pula ogni mese. Una parte è stata recuperata dalla cartiera per poi realizzare 60.000 buste di pregio per il marchio.
Favini ogni anno recupera 5 tonnellate di pula dal territorio e le trasforma in carte di qualità. Per le shopper di Dersut noi abbiamo recuperato 300 kg che mixate con cellulosa di carta diventano circa 3 tonnellate di carta in una percentuale del 10%, quindi 10% di pula diventa un risparmio di 10% di albero in carta.
A Dersut sono convinti che la sostenibilità dell'intera produzione sia una scelta imprescindibile e che le loro eco-shopper veicolino la loro attenzione per l'ambiente.
Io credo che non si possa più prescindere noi dalla sostenibilità. È sicuramente un valore aggiunto. Questo residuo di lavorazione sottoprodotto alla fine va a promuovere sotto veste di shopper l'immagine aziendale, quindi ha un valore fortemente identitario e di comunicazione.
Il progetto è valso a Dersut il premio Impresa Sostenibile 2025 e ha già spinto i partner della filiera, Dersut, Favini e il produttore delle shopper, a immaginare i prossimi sviluppi della collaborazione. L'obiettivo è rinnovare un processo di sostenibilità che riguarda non solo le materie prime, ma l'intero ciclo di vita del prodotto.
Abbiamo un prodotto che non contiene nessuno sbiancante. L'inchiostro che noi abbiamo utilizzato è un inchiostro ad acqua e quindi ecologico. I benefici economici sono benefici della vita dei nostri cittadini.
Le ecocarte sono carte di lusso progettate per garantire elevate prestazioni nella stampa e nella cartotecnica. Per scoprirne le applicazioni concludo il mio percorso in un'azienda manifatturiera di packaging premium che lavora da 30 anni con la cartiera Favini. Qui la sostenibilità si unisce alla qualità estetica e alla cura del dettaglio tipiche del Made in Italy.
Negli ultimi anni il rapporto con Favini ha raggiunto il 300% come acquisti noi verso di loro. Ovviamente questo dipende dal cliente che ha scelto e sposa una realtà molto artigianale con alle spalle un'industria che non è per nulla artigianale. Noi siamo cresciuti con loro e loro sono cresciuti con noi.
From the Eurozone's diverse economies to its emerging startups, get the latest news and analysis on Europe's economy, business and markets. See the big picture. Euronews Business.
Discover the Euronews app. Stay connected anytime, anywhere. Get the latest news in video. Let the pictures tell the story, with no comment. Download the Euronews app.
Want to be inspired? Start your sensory journey with the Euronews Culture newsletter. Sign up now on euronews.com/newsletters. Delivered every week to your inbox.
Capital needs to flow as freely as people can flow. Talking about capital markets is very abstract. Everyone knows what savings are.
Welcome to The Big Question, a series from Euronews where we speak to some of the most influential people in the world of business. And today is no different. I'm joined by Verena Ross, who is the chair of the European Securities and Markets Authority. It's a real pleasure to have you on the show, Verena.
Thank you very much, Angela. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, ESMA's key mission is to enhance investor protection, promote orderly financial markets and safeguard financial stability. And you have one very big job on your hands at the moment as part of all this, which is to try and make Europe's capital markets essentially work more like a single market instead of 27 partly fragmented national markets. Can you just elaborate on why it's so important for Europeans, like what people are essentially missing out on because Europe's capital markets are fragmented?
So if we look at household assets in the European Union, there are about 37 trillion euros that are sitting largely idle. People make their own choices. They want to invest in their own home. They want to leave some money and cash in the bank. But there's a lot of capital which is basically not productively invested. And that is to the detriment both of the people who want their money working for them, to really want to save for their financial goals, for their old age protection. And it's also a problem for companies who are looking for financing. We need to make sure that we are able to live up to the speed of innovation, to the speed of developments in markets globally, and that we position Europe well. We are clearly stronger together. we need to make sure that we find European solutions rather than going back into our national markets and trying to solve issues at national level. We really need to put all our force together to make sure that as Europe, we can really compete at a global level.
Now, the Capital Markets Union has recently been rebranded as the Savings and Investment Union. Why the rebrand?
So there was the idea that, you know, talking about capital markets is very abstract, it's quite technical, but when you talk about savings,
yes,
everyone knows what savings are. And if you talk about converting that into investments,
yes,
that's again something which speaks to people. So I believe there's a general need to recognize that capital needs to flow as freely as people can flow within the European Union. We don't have borders. You can work wherever you want, you can invest wherever you want, and we need to ensure that investors, that citizens feel that they can, you know, make their money work wherever they happen to be based and wherever they want to invest. And so that kind of borderless market is really what we need to focus on.
Say, compared to the US, you know, do you think that there is that lack of financial education in Europe?
In general, in Europe, people are probably slightly less financially literate, but that is not because they don't have the intelligence or the wish to learn about it. It's more the fact that in America, because you don't have state guaranteed pay-as-you-go pension schemes, anyone who works and who needs to think about his old age needs to directly be engaged in thinking about investing in capital markets. In Europe, that's not necessarily the case, and I believe that we as Europeans need to be sure that we ask ourselves the right questions at the beginning of our careers. How can I make sure that I use my money to the best effect? Even if it's not very much on a monthly basis, it can still make a difference if you invest that in a product or that in the long term will provide you with a decent return.
Indeed, and Verena, there seems to be a misconception there that you need a lot of money to invest, but what would you say to that?
I think what we actually see in many European countries is that when you create that right framework and environment, you can actually see real differences in how the prospects for investors and companies change. You see, for example, in Sweden, they've made quite significant reforms 10, 15 years ago to their pension system, to their taxation system, and to the whole ecosystem around investing and funding. That has really made a difference and has made now investors in Sweden much more financially literate, much more engaged in capital markets, and also giving them returns from the capital market investments that maybe they started 10 or 15 years ago. At the same time, we see that the capital markets are quite vibrant there, because you have actually companies going to the markets because they know there are investors that are interested. Similarly, we see in some countries at the moment a real uptick in looking at digital service providers to maybe invest a bit, putting 5 or 10 euros aside. You know, you can actually start with something quite small potentially and still see that developing. But you also need to make sure that you are actually well informed when you take those decisions, that you understand the risks, the costs, and the opportunities that come with investing in capital markets. So we need more easily digestible information. We need more comparative sites that allows each of us to take the informed decisions that we need to take about our money.
And Verena, how concerned are you about the rise of what they call finfluencers, financial influencers, giving investment advice on social media?
We all live in a world where social media is becoming more important, and finfluencers, so the people who are trying to influence on finance matters, can play an important role to help investors get information. What we have done as ESMA was to also make sure that we alert investors to the fact that, they need to be conscious these people might just be providing their personal opinions, they might not really be experts, and they might be sponsored by companies without properly declaring that. And so you never quite know what is behind that kind of advice or that view that is provided, which, by the way, is not proper advice. Of course. It is a personal opinion most of the time. We've also done some work to try to explain to finfluencers that they need themselves to be careful in how they interact on social media on financial matters to protect investors and make sure that they get the advice and the support that they need, but in a way that is properly regulated and that ensures that they get fair, clear and not misleading information.
Verena, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show, and thank you very much for sharing all of your excellent insights with us.
Thank you very much, Angela. It's been a pleasure.
Join us for Qatar in Motion to discover how the country is reaping the benefits of the seeds of food resilience it planted years ago through innovative farming and sustainable practices.
Euronews. European weather.
Your next news bulletin on Euronews is coming up in under 2 minutes.
Hej, hej! Se, det må være jeg med til dig. Hvad? Nej, nej. En buket blomster. Det var specielt. Nu den er...
Kanali tu kakushikilia tu. Si kiko. African